Welcome to yet another episode where we shall be looking at the preparation for the mathematics paper 2 for grade 10 final examination. So unlike the first paper, this second paper has very few topics, and topic number 1 is what we call the statistics. Okay, some people call it data handling. And then topic number 2 is what we call the analytical geometry. Okay, and then from analytical geometry, we have what we call the trigonometry. And then from trigonometry, we normally infuse the measurements within this paper. And then lastly, we have what we call the Euclidean geometry. Okay, so let's just dive into this paper. Let's use it for our preparation. So instructions, we have 7 questions, and we need to answer all of them. Okay, so question number 1, which is the statistics, are telling us that Mr. Baloy, Mr. Baloy conducted a survey, and in this survey, it was on the amount of airtime each learner had on his or her cell phone. Okay, then from there, we have the amounts. We have 12, we have 16, 20, 22, 26, 30, 32, 38, 40, 46, 54, and all those numbers. So we can see that all these numbers have been arranged for us in order from the smallest to the biggest, okay? They want us to draw a box and whisker to represent the data. Now, one thing we know about a box and whisker is that it represents 5 numbers, okay? Which 5 numbers are basically the minimum, we have the maximum, we have the Q1, the Q2, as well as the Q3. So before we even start, we need to start by identifying or looking for the Q2. So since we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So we have 13 numbers, and we need to find the middle number. So half of 13 is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's going to be position number 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so this becomes your Q2. And then let's look at the first numbers on the left, and let's look for the Q1. Okay, so we have this and that, this and that. So between 20 and 22, meaning that our Q1 is going to be a 21. Okay, so you plus 20 plus 22, divide by 2, which is 21. And then 1, 2, 1, 2. Let's add these 2. That's going to give us 100 divided by 2, which gives us a 50. Okay, so if I'm to draw my box and whisker, remember it needs to be on some sort of a ruler or a line, okay? If I use 0, let me use intervals of 20. Will it make sense? No, 20 is too small. Let me use 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, there's a 60, and probably a 17. So if this is a 10, the smallest number is a 12, which can be somewhere there. Then our Q1 is a 21, which is just slightly after 20. The Q2 is 32, somewhere there. And then the Q3 is a 50, just on the dot. And then 68 can be somewhere there. So use your ruler, and then you connect. Just connect that to that. Okay, so that is your box and whisker. And then they want us to determine the interquartile range. So we know that the interquartile range is basically a Q3 minus a Q1. So our Q3 was a 50. Our Q1 was a 21. So instead of this being a 30, we're going to get a 20. It's going to be a 20 what? It's going to be a 29. All right, then the range, we know that range is the maximum minus the minimum. So our maximum is a 68 minus the minimum, which is a 12. If I subtract this, I'm getting a 56. Okay. And the next, they want us to comment on the skewness. So you can see that from 32 to 50, we have like 18 data pieces in between. And then from 21 to 32, that's like 12 pieces. So we have more data to the right. Okay, so we're going to say that it is skewed to the right. Okay, so some people prefer to say positively skewed. Positively skewed or skewed to the right will just do the job. Okay, then question number 2, the histogram below shows the distribution of examination scores for learners in the introductory stats. Okay, so between 30 to 40 is just a 12. This is 18, we have 55, we have a 57, a 43, 11, as well as a 4. It goes up to 100. So how many learners wrote? So we need to add up everything, okay? So it's a 12 plus 18 plus a 55 plus a 57, a 43, 11, and 4. Okay, so when I punch all this into my calculator, let's see, 12 and 18 is a 30, 55 is going to be 85 plus 57, which is a 142, a 43, 185, 11, say plus 11, and then plus 4, which gives us 200 learners, okay? Then identify the model class. So model class is basically a class that is having the tallest bar in the histogram. So it's this one. So it's between 60 and 70. So how do we write that class? So we're going to say 60 is less the mark, which is M, and then is less 70. So something like that. Can put the equal sign depending on where you want to put it, but that is how the class should be indicated. And then 2.3, they want us to determine the estimated mean. Now, for us to get the estimated mean, remember, you need to find the midpoint of these classes, okay? So this is more like a grouped data kind of scenario. So here we're going to have a 35 multiplied by the 12 plus this is going to be a 45 multiplied by 18. And then we have a 55 multiplied by 55 again, plus we have a 65 multiplied by 57, and then 75 multiplied by 43, 85 by 11, and then 95 by 4. And then the answer we get, we must divide it by 200. The formula tells us that estimated mean should be summation of f of x over the summation of f. Okay, so let me punch this into my calculator just once and for all, so that I get the answer. So we're saying 35 times 12 plus 45 times 18 plus 55 times 55 plus 65 times 57 plus 75 times 43 plus 85 times 11 plus 95 times 4. We're saying we're dividing this by 200. So I'm getting 62,5 as my answer. Okay, that's a 62,5. So you can draw the table and get the intervals, find the frequency, midpoint, and all of that, but I prefer to use this. Then 2.4, how do we estimate the median mark of the group? So with the median mark, we know that the total is 200. 200 divided by 2, we're going to get what? 100. Now let's try to plus up. Okay, let's try to add up all of these numbers and see where we get 100. Alternatively, somebody could say a half of n plus 1, okay, which is basically a half of 201, which will give you just 100,5. So the question is, where do we find 100,5 if we are to add up these frequencies? So 12 and 18 gives us a 30, okay? So we know that the median cannot be in the first bar because it is smaller than 100,5. When you plus 18, it's going to give you a 30. 30 is still smaller, then meaning that we're going to add the 55 to give us a total of 85. So 85 is still smaller than 100,5. Then when we add the 57, then we get an answer that is bigger than even 100.5, meaning that our 100 falls within this class interval. So that's where the median is going to be found. The question is, estimate the median mark. So we could say 60 plus 70 divided by 2, and someone can say it's just 65, because we know that the median mark is found within this interval. Okay, if ever they ask for the median mark interval, just tell us between 16 and 17. And then in which interval does the upper quartile lie? In which interval does the upper quartile lie? So upper quartile is just the same as Q3. So Q3, for us to get the position, is going to be 3 over 4 into n plus 1. Okay, so what is 3/4 of 200? We can just start from there. 3/4 of 200 is going to give me 150. Eh? But then if I add a 1, then it becomes 150.75. Okay, so this is the position. So I'll continue with the addition. Remember, we had 85 here. 85 plus 57 gives us 142. Our interest is 150. So meaning that the 150 is going to fall within the next interval of 70 up to 80. So come down and tell us that it is 70 less m less or equal to just 80. So that is how that question 2 would have been answered. Question number 3, which is the analytical in the figure triangle ABC has vertices A, B, and C. Calculate the length. So when they ask for length, that's the distance. Leave your answer in the third form. So we know that we can use what we call the distance formula. Okay, so BC should be the square root. We can say x1 minus x2 squared plus y1 minus y2 squared. Let's do the substitution. We're looking for BC. So if this is x1, y1, this is going to be x2, y2. So that's going to be 3 minus 6 but squared plus negative 5 minus 1 squared. So that's going to be a 3 squared, and then this is going to be a 6 squared. So that is 9 plus 36, which is a 45. Okay, 45. And then when you punch this 45 into the calculator to get a simplified side, square root of 45 gives me 3√5. Okay, that's basically units. So show us the formula, the substitution, and then the answer. All right. Then 3.2, they want us to get the midpoint of D, midpoint D of AB, midpoint of AB. So there is a point D here, which is the midpoint. So how do we get the midpoint? Formula for midpoint is x1 plus x2 divided by 2. y1 plus y2 divided by 2. Please, midpoint, we plus the points. Distance, we subtract the points. So it's going to be negative 11 plus a 3 over 2, then a 2 plus negative 5 over 2. So that's going to give us negative 8 divided by 2, which is a negative 4. When you plus this, we're going to get a negative 3 over 2. So negative 4 and then negative 3 over 2 becomes our midpoint. And then can we prove that ABC is 90? So they want us to prove that this angle is a 90. Now, one thing we know that if lines are forming a 90, the gradient of 1 multiplied by the gradient of 2 must give us a negative 1. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to find the gradient of AB multiplied by the gradient of BC. So remember, gradient is change in y over the change in x. So let's look at AB. So gradient of AB, can say this is x2, y2. So y2 minus y1, so it's going to be a 2 minus minus 5 over negative 11 minus 3. What does that become? So that's going to be a 7 over negative 14, which is basically negative a half. Then when we look at the gradient of BC, we do the same thing. It's going to be 1 minus minus 5 over 6 minus 3. So that's going to be a 6 over 3, which gives us a 2. Then multiply the 2, negative a half, times 2 gives us a negative 1. So therefore, we know that AB is perpendicular to BC. Hence, angle B is going to be a 90, or angle ABC is going to be a 90. Then calculate the area of ABC. Now, since we know that this is a right angle triangle, we found this distance BC to be 3 root 5. We need the other side that forms the 90 with this line, which is the distance AB. Okay, so if I can find the distance AB, then we apply the area formula. Okay, so with AB, we're saying the square root of, we have negative 11 and 2. And then we also have 3 and negative 5. Okay, negative 5. So let's just substitute these points. So negative 11 minus 3 squared plus 2 minus 5 squared. So what does that give us? That's a 14, which is a 290 something. Okay, so it's a 14 squared. We're saying plus a 7 squared. This gives me 7 square root of 5 units. Then we know that area is a half times the base times the height. When I substitute, it's a half. Let my base be 7 root 5. The height is 3 root 5, the one that we found initially. Okay, so we know that this and that is going to give us a 5. So 21 times 5, which is 105. And then when I divide by 2, just punch everything into the calculator. I'll get 52,5, but this is units squared, since we are looking for the area. Okay, so that is how we would have answered question number 3. Question 4. In the diagram, we have a right angle triangle with the sides A, B, C, and angle B is a 90. Thank you. Write down the following in terms of A, B, and C, the sign of A. Now, if this is a 90, okay, now they want this. So if A is the angle of reference, this is going to be the opposite, this is going to be the adjacent, this is going to be the hypotenuse. And from our SOHCAHTOA, we know that the sign is given as the opposite over the hypotenuse. So what that becomes is that our opposite is A over the hypotenuse, which is B. So it's going to be A over B. And then 4.1.2, they want the chord of C. So if C is now the reference angle or the angle of interest, then this becomes the opposite. This becomes the adjacent. The hypotenuse must stay, since it is always opposite the 90 degrees. But we know that tan is opposite of adjacent, but chord is the reciprocal, meaning that we get the adjacent over the opposite. So meaning that in this case, the chord of C is the adjacent, which is A, over the opposite, which is C. All right. And then 4.1.3, if it's given that A is a 5, and then angle A is a 50, they want us to find the size of C. Okay. So if A is of interest, meaning that this is now the opposite again. This is the adjacent, what they want. So which trig ratio combines opposite and adjacent is the tan. Okay, so 4.1.3, I'll say that the tan of 50 is equal to the opposite, which is a 5, over the adjacent, which I need, which is a C. Do the cross multiplication, okay, meaning that C is going to be 5 over the tan of 50. So when I punch that into my calculator, okay, so that is 5 over the tan of 50. that becomes 4,195, which is 4,20 units. Okay, they never told us anything. So 4,2 units or 4,20 units comes the answer. Then 4.2, given 13 cos theta is 12, where x is between 0 and 90, which is the first quadrant, without using a calculator and using a sketch, they want us to simplify this. So let me jot it this side. Okay, so we have 13 cos of theta is 12. Step number 1, isolate the ratios. Okay, divide both sides by 13, meaning that the cos of theta is 12 over 13. Since they want a sketch with your Cartesian, you're going to draw a triangle somewhere there. Okay, but we know that cos is adjacent over hypotenuse. So this is a 13, this is a 12, and then that is your theta. So before you even attempt to do anything, before you even attempt to answer the question, first complete this triangle, because that's where the first marks are going to be. Using the theorem of Pythagoras, r squared is equal to x squared plus y squared, meaning that our y, okay, if that's your y, so your y is going to be the square root of 13 squared minus 12 squared. That's 169 minus 144, which gives us a 25, which gives us a 5 as our answer, positive 5, okay? Then if the sketch is finished, they want us to get the sine of theta. So meaning that sine is opposite over hypotenuse. So it's a 5 over 13. So most of the marks are going to be by the sketch before you get the mark for the answer. Then tan theta minus cosec squared. So tan of theta minus cosec squared theta. So how do we get the tan? We said opposite of adjacent, which is now a 5 over 12. Cosec is the reciprocal of sine, okay? Meaning that we're going to switch the sine ratio, which is 13 over 5, and then you square that. Okay, so simplifying that, we have a 5 over 12 minus 169 over 25. So in as much as they said without a calculator, we can still use the calculator to get this answer of ours. But remember, we are not allowed to give the answer in decimals, because that way we shall know that you've used the calculator. If ever you want to be very committed, do the cross multiplication with a fraction so that you have a 5 times 25 minus 12 times 169 over the 12 times a 25. Okay, so 5 over 12, I'm just punching everything at once, minus 169 over 25. It is giving me negative 1903 over 300. But examiners, how do you expect people to multiply this without a calculator? Okay, but remember, the calculator part is just to avoid learners from getting the value of theta. We don't want the value of theta. But then with all the other steps, feel free to use the calculator. All right, then 4.3, they want us to simplify this. We have the cosec of theta, cot of 30, cos 45, and then cosec of 45. So we're going to use what we call the special angles. So cosec is the same as 1 over sine of 60. Cot is the same as 1 over 10 of 30. Then that's the cos of 45 multiplied by the cosec, which is the sine, 1 over sine of 45. Okay, so what is the sine of 60? We know that sine of 60 is square root 3 over 2. But since we have a 1 over, okay, which is going to be 2 over root 3. Then the tan of 30, how do we get the tan of 30? It's going to be 1 over square root of 3. But since we have the cot, meaning that's going to be root 3 over 1, plus the cos of 45, we have 1 over root 2, multiplied by the cosec, which is going to be the root 2 over 1. when you switch it around. So this 3 cancels the 3, the root 2 cancels the root 2. So you'll be left with 2 plus 1, which gives us a 3 as the answer. All right, so that is how we would have obtained that. And then 4.4, they want us to solve this trig equation. Answers are between 0 and 90. So step number 1, we need to move this 3 since there's a plus sign between the 3 and the sec. So it's going to be sec x is equivalent to 2 because 5 minus 3 is going to give us a 2. Oh, Lord, my apologies, We said sec x, not the other way around. Okay, so sec x is that. Then we know that sec is the reciprocal of cos, meaning that the cos of x is going to be 1 over 2. If I'm to rephrase this around. Then the shift cos of x should, shift cos of 1 over 2. Shift cos of 1 over 2 should give us x, and then meaning that our x is going to be just a 60. All right, so that is how that would have been answered. Okay, sec x, shift cos of a half, which is a 60. Okay, question number 5, which is the trig function. They're telling us that in the diagram below, the graphs f of x, we have cos x plus a, g of x is that. I write down the values of a and b. So what does a represent? A is a shift, okay? With the f graph, okay, this is the cosine graph. We expect this graph to be passing by 1, and then this minimums to be below. So since we have 1 unit of difference, it simply tells us that a moved 1 unit upwards. So a is positive 1, and then b is the amplitude for the sine graph. So the highest point this graph is reaching is a 2. Minimum is a 2, meaning that b is going to be a 2. Write down the period of g. So g is the sine x. Period is always 360 degrees. In other words, how many degrees do we need to get a full graph? So it's basically going to be at 360. But now, someone will ask you that why is a b a 2 and not a negative? Okay, because the sine of 90 is giving us a negative answer. So meaning that this amplitude should be negative. Okay, that graph is a flipped one. Thank you for that. And then they want us to write the range of f. So with f, we are seeing that the maximum is a 2, the minimum is a 0. So we're going to say 0 is less or equal to y, less or equal to positive 2. The amplitude of g, we said is going to be a 2. Amplitude, remember the displacement must always be a positive. So that is a 2. And then determine the number of solutions we have, okay, where f of x is equal to g of x. So number of solutions is how many points are the two graphs meeting, okay? This is point number 1, point number 2, point number 3. So we have 3 solutions. Okay, so if it is 3 solutions, we call between negative what? 180 and a positive. But wait a minute. If it is f of x is equal to g of x, okay, and then this negative 180 is not part of it, and the positive 180 is not part of it because they are not equal signs, which means we have just 1 solution. It's not 2, or not 3 rather. It's basically 1 solution for that. And then for which values of x is g of x below 0? Is g of x ever below 0? Yes. So when x is less than negative 180, and then also between 0 and 180. Okay, so you're going to say that x must be less than negative 180, or between 0 less x and less 180. Those are the regions where the graph is below the x-axis. Then 5.7, the graph f is reflected above the x-axis, okay, and then moved 2 units downwards. Determine the equation of h. We're reflecting the cos graph. meaning that we're going to end up having the negative cos of x. Since the shift was a +1, now it's going to be a -1, and then we're moving it 2 units downwards. So the final value should be negative cos x minus 3. So that's our h of x. And then they want us to get the range. So if it's -3, where is the graph gonna be? Because after the reflection, it should be somewhere here. Okay, you move it 2 units downwards, it's gonna end at -4. Okay, that graph will reach a -4 value. And then this one that was supposed to be at a 0, you move it 2 units downwards, gonna be a -2, meaning that we have -2 and -4. So you can say y is an element of -4 and -2. Or -4 is less or equal to y, less or equal to -2. All right, so that is question number 5. Question number 6, an observer that is on the top of a cliff that is 200 meters above the sea level observes the angle of depression of 2 ships to be 45 and 30 for both those ships. Determine the size of D, BDC, BDC. So this angle here. Now we know that this is a 90. This is a 45. So this is a right angle triangle, meaning that this angle is a 45-degree angle. Okay. Then what is the reason? It is going to be angles in a triangle. BDC, BDC. So that is a 45 angles in a triangle. Then 6.2, they want us to get the length BC. Okay, so we were given the opposite. We're looking for the adjacent, but we have a 45. So we can use the tan and say that the tan of 45 is equal to the opposite, which is 200 over the adjacent, which is BC. To get the BC, flip it around. So 200 over the tan of 45, but I know that tan of 45 is 1. So therefore, our BC becomes 200 millimeters. All right. And then someone could also have, or whatever, seen this, that if this is a 45, then this is an isosceles triangle. If this is a 200, automatically this must also be a 200. Okay, then determine the distance between ship A and ship B. Okay, so they want us to get that distance. But if this is a 200, we need to find the distance AC. Okay, we can still use the tan and say that the tan of 30 is equal to the BC. No, is it BC? It's DC, which is 200 over the AC. And then AC alone is going to be 200 over the tan of 30. Simplify this. Okay, we simplify this and say that 200 divided by the tan of 30, I'm getting 346,41. Okay, so this is the total distance from there up to there, 346,41. But we need to subtract the 200, and then we shall get 146,41 meters. And then that becomes the distance of interest. All right, question 7, which is the measurements. They gave us the formulas for volume, length, breadth, and height. Surface area is given as that. Determine the surface area of this. Okay, so let's do the substitution into the formula. Okay, so it's going to be 2 multiplied by the length 8 multiplied by the breadth 3 plus 2 multiplied by 8 multiplied by 5 plus 2 multiplied by 5 multiplied by 3. So 2 by 8 by 3 gives me a 48. That's a 40. That's going to be 80. And then a 30. So 110 plus 48, I end up with a 158. But this is meters squared. All right, then calculate the volume of the prism if the height is doubled. Okay, so if you double this, you're going to get a 10. And then you half the breadth, which is going to be 1,5, okay, 3/2. Meaning that volume is going to be 8 multiplied by 1,5 multiplied by 10. Okay. Does that make sense though? That is 7.2 volume if the height is doubled and the breadth is halved. Yes, it makes a lot of sense. Let's do the substitution. So 8 times 1,5 multiplied by 10, I'm getting 120. So 120 meters squared. All right, so that is that. Then we move on to 7.3. Calculate the volume if the length is doubled and the height is halved and the breadth is tripled. So if the length is doubled, meaning that we're going to have a 16. The height is halved, which is a 5/2, multiplied by the breadth, which is tripled. So it's going to be 3/3, which is a 9. Okay, multiplying that together, we have a 16 multiplied by 2,5 multiplied by 9. It's giving me 360 meters cubed. Volume is meters cubed, please. Surface area is the meter squared. All right, then question number 8, telling us for 8 and 9. But how many questions did they say we have here? Did they say 7? They said 7, but now we're seeing 8 and 9. I'm only worrying. Let's kill it. Okay, ABC is a parallelogram. AC is a diagonal. Okay. And then we go on to say that AFEC are collinear. They are on the same straight line. Now, can we prove that ABE is congruent to CDF? So ABE is congruent to CDF. Now, before we even go further, ABCD is a parallelogram. So we know that with a parallelogram, opposite sides must be equal. Okay, so we're going to start with that. So that AB is the same as a CD. Reason, opposite sides of a palm. Okay, opposite sides of a parallelogram. And then from there, we're going to say that C2 is the same as A1. So A1 is the same as C2. Those are alternate angles because we know that AB is parallel to CD. All right, so if that is true, then we can also see that the E1 is going to be the same as the F1. Those are also alternate angles. BE is parallel to FD. So we need only 3 facts. Number 1, number 2, number 3. Therefore, the triangles are congruent because we looked at the side and then the 2 angles. Okay, then can we prove that CEB, where is CEB, this angle here, that it is the same as AFD, AFD, the same as this, for 3 marks. So we can also do the proving. First of all, prove that these 2 triangles are indeed congruent. Okay, so what we do, we know that A2, okay, let me put it here. A2 is going to be the same as C1 because of the alternate angles. Alternate angles, BC is parallel to AD. Besides that, we know that AD is the same as BC. Those are the opposite sides of a parallelogram. So this one must be the same as that. And then what else do we need to know? What else do we need to know? B1, we don't need the B1. B and the D, so these angles and these angles are going to be the same. But since we say that this triangle is congruent to this one, so B1 is the same as D1, meaning that the D2 should be the same as B2. So we're going to say that BCE is congruent to AFD. And if they are similar or they are the same triangles, then we can draw the conclusion that therefore E2 must be the same as F2. Then how do we prove that AF is the same as CE? How do we prove that? So since we've proved that the two triangles are congruent, I think we can take the basis from there. That C1 and A2 we already know. Okay, so I'm just going to use the same sort of approach, that these two triangles are congruent, meaning that this side must go hand in hand with that side, and then this side goes hand in hand with that side, and then this one here goes hand in hand with that. And then we are done with proving that those two sides are equal. So the process is just more or less the same thing. Prove that the triangles are congruent, and then do comparison of the sides based on the angles. All right, question number 9, the diagram below, R is the midpoint, okay, of QT, and S is the midpoint of PT. The length of SR, okay, is given as 2x plus 4. Q is a 39, and then this is a 55. Determine the length of PQ. Determine the length of PQ in terms of what? In terms of X. So let's start by finding out, okay? Since they told us that R is the midpoint, okay, meaning that this must be the same as that, okay? Then automatically S is also a midpoint, so this is the same as that. So we can use the midpoint theorem. So if this is 2x plus 4, meaning that PQ must be twice this distance, 2 into 2x plus 4, which is going to give us 4x plus 8. That's what the question wanted, 4x plus 8. And then if the length of PQ is 18, okay, so if that is 18, then automatically this is going to be a 9. Can we find the value of x? So I can say my 2x plus 4 is a 9. 2x is going to be a 5, and then x is going to be a 5 over 2, or basically a 2, 5. You can do the same thing for x plus 8, equate it to 18, and then you still get the 2, 5 or 5 over 2. Then can we prove that TRS is similar? Okay, that is a similar to TQP. Now, if this is a midpoint theorem, automatically these two lines will be parallel. That's the first thing we need to say. PQ is parallel to SR. Reason, midpoint theorem. And if that is true, it simply means that T is the same as T, which is common for both triangles. And then we can say that TSR is going to be the same as angle P. Reason, those are corresponding angles because PQ is parallel to SR. And then do the same thing with the TRS. Okay, TRS is the same as that angle Q, which is a 39, which is a 55. Same story, corresponding angles, PQ is parallel to SR. So therefore, TRS is similar to TQP, reason, angle, angle, and angle. So guys, that brings us to the end of this paper. I wish you guys all the best in your preparations, and let's meet